Hello and welcome back to a new episode of Debut Diaries. I'm Liselle Sambury. I am a traditionally published author. That's my book. And this series, Debut Diaries, is all about me sharing the experiences of being a debut author and things that I go through and things that I learn and like my experiences, so you can kind of get an insider look at what a debut year looks like for a traditionally published author, or like being a debut author looks like in Trad Pub, specifically for young adult, because I do have a young adult book. And yeah, so it's a new episode, and as of when this episode is posted, my book will actually officially be out in the world. Yay! And so I thought I would talk about all the pre-pub marketing. I think marketing is a really interesting part of the traditional publishing process. Well, it's part of self-pub as well, but like in the trad pub world, because I think there are a lot of things that you don't kind of know until you're in it. It's very specific to an author and their book and the imprint / publisher they're with. Different books get different things happen for different people. It's really a very varied experience. So I'm just sharing my experience to hope that can kind of give you a little bit of an insider look in that case, and to kind of give you an idea of what is possible. So I'm going to be talking about all my pre-pub marketing. So this is everything up until my release date. I'm filming this slightly before my actual release date, but I don't expect anything new to be happening within the next 3 days. Everything seems pretty much like down pat, so I figured it was fine to go ahead with this. So I'm going to be talking about basically what I paid for, what I put money into, what my publisher put money into, to my knowledge, because sometimes there might be things that your publisher is doing that you simply aren't aware of. So I'm just talking about everything that I was aware of. I'm also talking about what I did free marketing and publicity wise, and what my publisher did free marketing / publicity wise, and then if I was, the things that I was happy my publisher did for me, and the things that I spent money on, if I thought it was worth spending money on them, and if there was anything that I wish I did marketing publicity wise. Something I will say is I am myself unclear about the division of publicity and marketing in Trad Pub. To my understanding, marketing in Trad Pub is what they spend money on, and publicity is like free things, but I don't know that for sure. That's not set in stone. I really don't have a firm grasp on that. So if you realize that I'm using them interchangeably, or I'm calling everything marketing, it's truly because I do not. Unless it came from my publicist, that's kind of the only way that I know. So to my knowledge, most of what was done by my publisher for me was done through publicity. And there were some things I think were done through marketing, and I'll talk about those, but like I myself am unclear on the division, so don't hold me to the division between like publicity and marketing in traditionally published in Trad Pub, because I'm not really sure, and I know sometimes it can be different based on different publishers as well. So yeah, with all that preamble gone ahead, I'm gonna go ahead and get started with this. Now for the things that I spent money on. So I wanted to budget myself. I didn't want to financially stretch myself thin, especially because when I had gotten my advance, some people advise you like put aside some of your advance for marketing. I was not in that sort of financial situation. I needed all of my advance to pay off my student debt and things like that, and so I couldn't be holding money aside beyond like money held aside for taxes, which of course I held aside because you have to pay that. And so I decided that certain things I just wasn't going to do because I knew they were going to be financially too straining, and so I didn't do a pre-order campaign. Instead, I decided to do giveaways. So a lot of the money I spent, the bulk of it was on items for giveaways and shipping for giveaways. So I'm going to go through each item individually to tell you all about it. Well, first I got book plates. So this is what the book plate looks like. I signed it. And so the book plates I bought, I I initially bought like 300 and then I decided I needed more. So then I bought like an additional 100. And so I bought these so that I could send them to an indie bookstore of my choosing, and like, so then I could say to people, hey, if you order through this indie, then you'll get a signed book plate to encourage people to purchase their books through an indie. And so I worked with another storybook shop in Toronto for that. And so I got those book plates so I could send them to them so they could be put in the book. I will say that on screen somewhere, I will flash up the costs as I talk about these. But my publisher did also provide book plates for other things that I had going on. And so I didn't necessarily need to buy book plates myself, which I hadn't known up front, and I could have asked about that. I'm still happy that I bought my book plates because they have like a nice cute design, and the book plates that are provided are just like blank white paper. So that's why I bought book plates. Next I bought art prints. So this is what the art print looks like. That's the back. It has all my like book information. And so I bought the art prints, and these I bought a smaller quantity of them. I bought 25 and then I needed to order more because I was sending them to CPs and betas, and then I wanted to send, you know, I was just sending them to people that had helped me on the book as well. I wasn't just using them for giveaways, and so I ended up ultimately buying more. So I bought 2 different sets of those. So I'll flash up, you'll see on screen. But I bought those as well to put in the giveaway. Then I bought a set of vinyl stickers. That's what the sticker looks like. The art and the stickers, I drew all that myself. I designed my bookmarks and my book plates myself, so I didn't have to pay an artist or pay any sort of designer, so I avoided those costs as well. Yeah, and I was happy with that. If the art had turned out poorly, I would have just paid someone, but I actually managed to do something good, so then it was fine with it. So these stickers, I bought these as well. I initially bought from a different sticker provider, and then I didn't like them, and so I bought from a better sticker provider. So then I kind of incurred double costs on that. A lot of extra costs I incurred was me like not knowing things yet, so that was a thing. Finally I did, oh, not finally actually. So I did bookmarks, of course. So this is my bookmark. Book information on the back. It's also got a tassel. So I paid extra to have the printer put in this hole and put in this metal grommet for me. So I picked the color and everything. I paid extra for that. I bought the tassels separately and I tasseled every bookmark myself. And I got about 200-ish bookmarks, I believe. Look on screen. On screen will be correct. I got about 200-ish of those. So my bookmarks were more expensive than the average bookmark because I wanted to make tasseled bookmarks, and that was something that I just like wanted to do for myself, and so it ended up being pricier because of that. And finally, the next thing I got these postcards. It's just blank on the back. This was one of those things that was like completely unnecessary because I wanted to send some of the swag to my CPs and betas who had read Blood Like Magic and who had helped me out. And so I wanted to write a note with it, and I didn't want to just write it on paper. And these postcards were really cheap. You got 100 for like 25 bucks. And I was like, I would like to spend 25 bucks to know that I'm sending my CP and beta something pretty. That's just me. So that's what that was. And then of course there were mailing costs. So mailing costs I've split into packaging costs and into the actual like courier service mailing costs. So packaging costs, because I had to buy bubble mailers, I just bought them from the local Canada Post. I had originally bought a set from Amazon, but they were way too small, and I couldn't find any bigger ones, and so I just ended up buying from my local post office. And then also the mailing costs. This was like the bulk, well, not the bulk of the cost, but the mailing costs were high, and I knew they were going to be high because I live in Canada, and most of the audience that I have on like my social media, etc., is based in the US, and my publisher is based in the US. And so when I was shipping giveaway items, I was exclusively shipping them to the US. Even though I had Canada US open giveaways, I just ended up continuously drawing people from the US. And so that was more expensive shipping. I also shipped a bunch of ARCs to friends in Canada, like to fellow reader, bookish friends, because frankly, I was trying to get rid of them. Because I'm the sort of person, I don't like to keep a lot of stuff. I didn't want to have too many things. And I'll talk about this more later, but my publisher sent out a lot of ARCs to people. And so I didn't need to do that anymore. So then I had all these leftover ARCs. So then I ended up just kind of going in my group chat and being like, hey, who wants one? And like sending it to them. I didn't do that wider because it was just frazzling for me to be like, now I gotta find people. And also I knew it would mostly be people in the US again, and I didn't want to do any more US shipping because it was already so expensive. So those were all the giveaway associated costs, except for I also got a PO box. So I got a PO box because I live in a small town and I didn't want people to have my direct address. It's a bit annoying because my PO box is obviously in the small town, so it is obvious where I live, but again, it was just for giveaways and for return mail. In the future, I now do have an alternate address in town that I'm able to send things to. It'll kind of make it difficult for packages, so I don't know if I'll keep the PO box or not, but I don't know that I will. And that was pretty pricey, and I got that PO box for the year. One last thing I forgot to mention, Sharpies, the cost of Sharpies and pens. So for me, I wasn't doing a lot of signing. The only thing I signed were my book plates and the giveaway items that I sent out. I also participated in some auctions, so also those auction items. Those were the only things that I signed. I bought like 2 Sharpies and 2 metallic pens, and I've been able to use them for everything. I know there's so many times where you like see authors will post on Instagram and stuff, and they've like gone through like this giant mass of Sharpies, and it's like, oh my god, I have to buy so many Sharpies to like do all my signing. I will say, if you're not like in a book box where you have to sign a bunch of tip-in pages, or like your publisher is like doing signed copies and so you have to sign a bunch of tip-in pages, if you aren't doing something special that's going to require you to sign a bunch of pages, and you're not planning to go to like a bunch of bookstores and do a bunch of bookstore signing, you don't need that many Sharpies. That's just my personal experience. Because my town is small, I don't have a local indie, so the indie I worked with is one in Toronto, and because of COVID, I haven't been able to go to Toronto, so I haven't needed that much stuff because the only thing I've signed is book plates. So I would say to kind of gauge what you're actually going to need to sign before you start running off and mass buying giant boxes of Sharpies, essentially. Now for other things that I spent money on. So I also spent money on a Later premium account. So Later is an Instagram scheduling tool. I'll flash up the price because of course I can't remember it. And I paid for this for the month of my debut because I had so many social media posts and so many things that I had to post. I wanted to be able to schedule those all ahead of time. On the Later free account, you can schedule 30 posts at once, but you can't do videos, you can't do carousels, and you can't do Instagram stories pre-planned. And I needed all of those, so that's why I paid money for that, so that I could have that. And I'm only going to use it for a month. After my debut month, I'm going to cancel it because I'm not going to need to be posting that much again. And it's been really helpful for me, so I think I will probably go ahead and do that again for my next book and my next book, etc. But for my regular day-to-day, just the free version is fine. I also paid for a premium Envato Elements account. So Envato Elements is basically like, it's like a stock site essentially. So they have stock video, they have stock photo, they also have templates. So they have mock-up templates. So like if you want a book mock-up or a magazine mock-up, they also have video templates, which is primarily what I wanted it for. So I originally just paid for like a month way back when. It wasn't this year. All of these costs, sorry, I think I forgot to say this in the beginning, all of these costs are for this year only, are for 2021 only, what I spent money on, so during my debut year. And so for Envato, I paid for a yearly subscription. I just decided because it was cheaper to bundle it, etc. But I did this because I needed it to get templates so that I could make book trailers. So I made a trailer for my cover. I did that in the past though. That wasn't done this year. But this year, I also did a book launch trailer so that when it was my book release day, I could post a video to celebrate my launch. And so that was another thing I did. So that cost a good chunk of money. But what I will say is once I had the Envato Elements subscription, I also did 3 book trailer jobs. So I did 2 book trailers for one author and 1 book trailer for another author, for Frida BK Mayday, who's the author of Ace of Spades, and for Cameron Garrett, who's the author of Off the Record. And full disclosure, I did an Off the Record trailer for her. And so the cost of that, they canceled out the cost of the Envato. So I made back all the money I spent on that doing book trailers for other authors. It's not something I like super advertise everywhere because I'm not like looking for it to become my job. It's just something I kind of sometimes do on the side. But that reaped the cost of that. But it is generally quite expensive. I think if you bought a monthly subscription and then you made everything that you want and like download as many things as you want, because all the things you download, you do keep the creative licensing for it. So you're able to continue using it even after your account has expired. And so I would say if you really want to use it for that, but you don't want to spend the full amount, that you can buy it for a month and use it. Now I will get into what my publisher spent money on. For this, I of course won't have figures because I don't know the actual figure cost. And these are, again, to my knowledge. There might be things that my publisher spent money on that I just don't know cost money, or I didn't realize they did for me that cost money. There are things like placements in bookstores, like where your book is placed, and those sorts of things do cost money. I don't know if my publisher has paid for any of those, so like I can't say things for that. I can really only speak to things that I know they had to spend money on. So the first thing is Goodreads giveaways. So my publisher did 2 Goodreads giveaways for me. So my Canadian publisher did one for Arcs of Blood Like Magic, and my US publisher did one for final copies of Blood Like Magic. So I had 2 Goodreads giveaways. Those cost money. I did ask my US publisher about doing a Goodreads giveaway, and then my Canadian one did one. I didn't know they were doing one, so that just popped up. And the next was mostly shipping. So both teams shipped my arcs to various influencers, book people, media people, etc. Whoever needed arcs, they shipped them to them. So I didn't have to do those shipping costs. If they wanted me to ship any of my arcs, like in the case of blurbs, there was a case in which it was easier for me to ship to a Canadian author from where I was, and they sent me a prepackaged label for that. So there were cases where they also sent, where if they wanted me to ship something, they would send me a prepaid UPS label. So I wouldn't pay for that either. But yeah, they did all of the ARC shipping. They also shipped final copies as well to people. And so I wasn't paying for that either, but that obviously cost money, and that was done by both my Canadian and my US teams. They also shipped me book plates. So the US teams shipped me a bunch of book plates. They're just blank white ones. And so that was done for, I don't know if you saw it, but Embossed in Spine, Gina, who is wonderful, and I'll link Embossed in Spine and Gina below, but she wanted to do like these cool painted spines of my books, and so we were sending her book plates to offer along with it, and so my publisher paid. They had the book plates printed, they sent it to me, they sent me a label, I signed them, I sent it to Gina. All of that was paid for by my publisher. I didn't have to do any of that. And so that was also that shipping, and I believe that is it. Let me check my notes. Yes, and that was it. So to my knowledge, those were the paid things my publisher did. Ooh, oh, right, I almost forgot. They also have done some ad stuff is being done in the works. So yeah, I don't know a ton about it. I just know ads are being done and I was excited. But yes, ads are a paid thing as well. So some of those are also in the works. And so those are the things that I, to my knowledge, know that my publisher has paid for. Let's talk about the publicity things / marketing things that I did by myself. So I'm going to talk about the social media post things first, and then I'll talk about the more publicity type things after. So social media post wise, like graphics that were made. So I made basically I'm going to talk about what my publisher made because it's hard to talk about what I made without talking about what they made. But my publisher did the animated cover for me. All those graphics you saw that were book quotes they did for me. They did the Instagram stickers for me, like the little Giphy sticker things that you could use in Instagram. They did that. And my Canadian publisher did 2 graphics for me. They did one for signed copies, getting signed copies through another story bookshop. I asked them if they could do that for me and they kindly did. So they did that. And then, what am I thinking of now? I'm blanking now. They did that, and then they also did the graphic for the launch event that I had with them on the 18th. And so they did all of that, and then all the other social media graphics I did. And that's why it's easier for me to talk about based on what they did. So graphics that were like to announce that I had been on a list, like an Amazon list or a Goodreads list, graphics that were to talk about starred reviews, things like that. All those were made by me, along with my launch event graphics as well. So I made all of those. I made both my cover reveal video and my book launch video. And these are things I also shared with my publisher just so that they could have them if they wanted to use them or wanted to share them on their platforms. In any context, they could have them. Publicity wise, things that I did was I solicited about 3 blog interviews because these were just blogs that I was familiar with. I solicited Write or Die. The podcast had put open a call for like Black authors to be guests, and so I emailed to be like, hey, I would love to be a guest because I'm a big fan of that podcast. And then also, what else did I solicit? Write on Con. So a bunch of authors in the debut group were talking about being invited to Write on Con, and so I decided to just email them and be like, hey, I'm also a 2021 debut and this is my book, and like, could I do something with you? And that's how I ended up being a part of Write on Con. So those are the things I solicited, and everything else was like people directly contacted me. So they contacted me about panels, or they contacted me about podcasts or blogs or whatever. And if I had time and bandwidth and it worked out, then I would agree to do those. I couldn't agree to do everything. Sometimes I really it was just too packed at that time. And I had too much stuff going on, and so I was like, I can't really do this now, but like maybe I could do it later, or maybe this isn't a right fit for me at all. So that was all the publicity I drummed up. And then my publisher basically did everything else publicity wise. So almost all of the blog features that I did came through the publicity team at my publisher. Almost all the like appearance stuff I had came through them. A lot of some panel opportunities came through them. So that Texas Library Association panel that I was on, that came through them. Montreal YA Fest, that came through them. And they also organized, my Canadian publisher organized the partnership with another story bookshop. They also organized my Canadian launch for me, and they did the graphics and all that stuff for that, as I said before. And so most of the opportunities came through my publisher. And so I was actually really relieved that I hadn't ran around and tried to like drum up all this stuff for myself, because so much had come through my publisher, and I think it would have been really overwhelming to have a bunch of stuff I had done and a bunch of stuff they had organized. I think that would have really quickly been overwhelming. I know that's not the case for everyone. everyone's experience is going to be different, but it was helpful for me to see those coming in. One thing I will say is like top lists. So like if your book is on like a BuzzFeed list or like top books of blah blah blah, that wasn't like something that came through my publicity team. People just kind of put me on the list. I say that because I think someone asked me how you get on those lists, and I truly don't know. To my knowledge, people just like pick you, is to my understanding. It's not, I don't think it's something that your publisher like solicits, to my understanding. It's like the person who wrote the article picked to put your book in there. And I've done some of those articles as well. I did one for Tor about like Black Girl Magic books. I just picked those books because they were books that I read and I really liked. So in those cases, that's how that comes together, to my knowledge. My publisher also organized some videos. So I feel like a lot of Big Five publishers have this. They'll have like an associated arm that like has like a blog or has like a YouTube or things like that. So like for HarperCollins, it's Epic Reads. For Simon Teen, it's Riveted Lit. And I think HCC Frenzy, something. Anyway, a lot of publishers will have that kind of like sidearm social content sort of platform, and so my publisher organized for me to do some videos with Riveted Lit, and so that was another like publicity / marketing thing that my publisher did on my behalf, and then I just showed up. Now we're gonna talk about out of the things that I paid for, that I put down cash on, what was worth it and what was not worth it. I think that everything I spent money on was actually worth it, but I might do things a little bit differently. Like I think I would definitely buy higher quantities of things up front to know that I had enough, because it was more expensive for me to buy them in separate batches, because then I had to pay shipping twice, and then it was like, it wasn't as cheap. But something I would also really recommend doing is on the second that January 2021 started, I got all excited and I immediately bought all of my paper products, giveaway products, and that was very not smart. So in the future, what I would do is I would subscribe to mailing lists from like all these people I bought these things from, like Moo and Jukebox. I would subscribe and I would wait until they had a sale, and then I would buy that large quantity of things that I need. I would not just immediately buy it full price. I wouldn't do that in the future. But I also think I picked really good printers. I printed through Moo and I printed my bookmarks through Jukebox. Everything else is printed through Moo. The stickers were done through Sticker App. And to me, it was really worth it to pay a premium printer. I know some people like to use Vistaprint. Vistaprint I did use for those little postcards, and they were fine for the little postcards, but I think Moo and Jukebox have better quality printing, and I'm happy I paid the premium for those. With Sticker App, I originally picked like a cheaper sticker provider, and they were cheaper, and I didn't like them, so I'm glad that I just paid extra for it. So I really liked all of my swag items. I just think that some of the paper products I would definitely buy higher quantities up front in the future, just to save me that time and money. I talked about before how I probably won't be doing the PO box in the future because now I have an alternative address. I think if you have an alternative address, that's helpful. I also know some people use their publisher's address. If I was living in Toronto, I definitely would have used my publisher's address as the return address to save myself from having to get a PO box. I do know an author friend who did that, and that would of course be way cheaper. So I would probably do that in the future instead of getting a PO box if I lived in Toronto, which, you know, we'll see in the future. So I would definitely do that. The Envato Elements thing, I thought it was worth it to get the yearly for me because one, I knew that if I made book trailers, I would make the money back, which I did. But I think, like I said before, for the average person, I would just, if you are going to delve into that, I would just pay for a month and just like download as much stuff as possible. What else did I do? yeah, I was cool with everything I spent money on. I was really happy I didn't do a pre-order campaign. For one, I don't think it made a difference. Lots of people still told me they pre-ordered, which was fantastic. So that was really good. And also, it's not only the cost of the pre-order campaign, it's also the emotional and mental labor of having to do all that packaging and having to send all that out at the same time that your book is launching. And I know this isn't the case for everyone. Like, I think most people are decent, but there are some times where people will kind of like get upset with the author that their stuff hasn't shipped yet. And like, I just have all of that weight off my chest. And I'm really glad for that. And so I think it was really worth skipping that. In terms of like, unpaid publicity things I did, the blogs that I worked with were really great blogs. I'm really big fans of the people that run them. And so to me, it was really worth soliciting those because those were great blogs. And I was really happy about that. And I didn't do that much soliciting myself. And yeah, and something else I did that I was really glad that I had done was I had set my publisher a list of like people that, like a top 10 list basically of like, can you please send ARCs to these people? And I'd sent it to my publisher and they followed through with it, which was great. And so I didn't have to be like, oh my gosh, I have to send to all of these people, because my publisher did it for me and then I saved all those costs. But the biggest thing I think that made a big difference in like things that I did was asking my publisher for as much as possible, because there were so many things that were taken off of my plate because I asked my publisher to do it and they agreed to do them. So like, sure, I could have made quote graphics. It wouldn't have been difficult for me to make quote graphics, but because my publisher made them for me, it was just another thing that was a weight off my chest that I didn't have to do. And I think that really contributed to why I could be so like chilled out and like calm when going into my book launch and my debut, because I didn't have the weight of all of this stuff on me that I had to do, because I asked them for as much as possible. And so then I was prepared and I knew, okay, these are the things that I want to do, that I'm going to put effort into, which was things like making special videos for YouTube. I forgot about that. That was a thing that I did. I made some special videos for YouTube. I'll link those over here and then down below. So I did those, and I made that trailer. And those were things that felt like a very worthy use of my effort. Things my publisher did that I was really happy about. So many things, honestly. And it's so interesting to me because when I was kind of getting into like and learning about publishing, so many people talked about how like your publisher isn't going to do anything for you, you're going to have to do all this stuff yourself, blah 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 blah. And that wasn't the case for me. Of course there were things that my publisher said, no, we can't do that for you, but there were a lot of things my publisher said, oh yeah, for sure, we'll do that for you. So many of those things I asked for, those Instagram stickers, I was so happy with. And then just sending out all of the ARC mailing they did and all the final copy mailing they did, the Goodreads giveaways that they agreed to do, like, and just like promotional things, like basically like the base effort of my publisher even was so much more than I thought it was going to be. So like the base effort of like, we will field publicity requests for you, that takes a lot of admin off your plate, and also brought in so many opportunities without me having to do anything. And I will say, I think this will very much differ based on different authors, and different books. My book has a very commercial hook, you know, kill your first love or lose your family's magic forever. And so that really helped me in that was something that drew people's attention and that made people interested in learning more about the book and doing interviews and like collabs and that sort of thing with me. So that was really, really helpful in my case. I don't know how different it would be if you had a quieter book, but that really helped me because then all those opportunities came in. And that was really, really great. I will say here, because I don't think I reiterated anywhere, I am not a lead title. So my book is not a lead title. If I was a lead title, they would tell me I was a lead title. So my book is not a lead title. So I'm like a mid-list author. And so that was my experience. And I will say also, originally starting off, there was not like a planned paid marketing budget that I was given. Sometimes people are said, hey, we're allocating like $10,000 to you, or we're allocating like $30,000 to you, or something like that. I did not have that allocated, and so my publisher kind of chose which things to spend money on. I don't know if it was on a more ad hoc basis, because I don't know the behind the scenes working, but I wasn't like promised X amount of dollars to be spent on my book, if that also helps with perspective on this. Yeah, and I also really appreciated the enthusiasm of my publishing teams and like trying to drum up opportunities. The Canadian team was really excited as well, and that was really great. I loved being able to work with the two teams. That was really fun. I didn't expect to like have that like US Canadian thing, because I did sell world English rights to my US team, and so I didn't expect to like be able to communicate with them separately like that, and that was really fun and exciting, and I loved being able to do like Canadian specific things with the Canadian team, and so I ultimately had a really positive experience with my publisher. I know that's not the case for everyone, but that was definitely my experience. Of course there would be things that I would want, like who doesn't want like a media box mailing of like a special box of their book, and like who doesn't want, you know, those sorts of things, of course. But I was very realistic in knowing that I was not a lead title, and so those sorts of things were not going to happen for me. But there were a lot of things that did happen for me that I was very excited about and appreciative of my publisher doing. So yeah, I had a overall really positive experience with their pre-pub marketing and publicity. That's it for pre-pub marketing and publicity, what I did and what my publisher did. I was originally set in a lower marketing tier, and so there were things I just expected I wouldn't be able to get because of that, but then my publisher actually did a lot of things for me, and I think I'm not sure whether to say those were things they would have always done, or if those were things that happened because my book was able to garner a lot of buzz, and therefore was perhaps doing better than expected. It's hard for me to say that because I'm not the publisher, but I was aware that some of the things that I were getting were clearly above the baseline. So I was really happy with all of that. I was especially really happy with all of the buzz that my book got, all the like lists that people put it on, and like people that promoted it and people that talked about, you know, loving it and really enjoying it. Word of mouth is powerful, and I think it works. I think there were opportunities I got that maybe I wouldn't have gotten without that sort of word of mouth and that buzz, and so I was really appreciative of that. And I'm aware that like I may have had a different experience because the hook of my book caught on with people, and like worked well, so that like Killing Your First Love or Losing Your Family's Magic Forever ended up being quite commercial and like really sticking with people, and helping with the book getting buzz. And also, of course, I'm not invalidating the work of the book and like the work I put into the book and people just enjoying the book itself. I really just talk about that because I know every author's experience is going to be so different. And I know in some cases there were things that I was able to achieve that were above baseline, in that some authors weren't able to get those things or weren't able to be put on those lists or things like that. So there was definitely a certain degree of buzz that I think really helped my book. And so I talk about that to be like, I talk about that to be clear that this is my experience based on these things, and this is one author's experience. So it's not to fully cast like rose-colored glasses on the publishing experience, because I know there are still people who will go into the process and their publisher will in fact not do anything for them, or their publisher will promise them things and then they will not deliver on them. Whereas opposingly, I also know there are lead titles who will get a lot of things that their publisher will do for them, or sometimes honestly lead titles that will be promised things that don't come. And so I'm really trying to help you understand that there is such a spectrum of experiences and that mine is just one. But I did have a really positive experience and I've been really happy with everything. Of course, I've had my lows. I've had times where I've been like, weep, weep. What was my weep weep? Oh, when I struggled to kind of find a moderator for a panel event, that was like a weep weep, woe is me. I'm not saying I never had lows, but my overall experience has really been a high. And so that's it for this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. If you have any questions for me, put them in the comments and I will answer to the best of my ability. And thank you so much for watching. Bye!